Actually interrupt here and bring on Amos Hochstein. He served as a senior advisor and Middle East negotiator for former President Biden. He's now a global managing partner with TWG. Pretty amazing to just be watching this, I think. Amos, what are your thoughts?
I think it's an incredible day, an incredible moment. A lot of credit to the administration and to Jared Kushner in particular, Steve Witkoff, for getting to this day. But 20 people who've been in hell for 2 years as prisoners and hostages are now released back to their families, and the bloodshed in Gaza stopping. I mean, this is really a momentous day.
Right up to when the hostages were released, I think people were still holding their breath, Amos. And now we start holding it about, I guess, the additional phases of the agreement and how that works. But this has got to be a pretty good sign that there was no last-minute problems or roadblocks. Or I don't know what we could have expected. Were you expecting this to come off like it did, or did you think there might be some last-minute hitches based on Hamas?
No, I didn't really think there would be hitches. I mean, even in the ceasefire in January, the releases happened as they were intended. I think that also all the pressure and the summit tomorrow and so on, I think that the focus was already beyond today's hostage release. I think the real question is, what do you do from here? And I don't want to take away. Today is a tremendously great moment. And again, I'm grateful to my successors and to our successors who've, in the Trump administration, Jared and Steve in particular, for doing this. But I do think it's hard. One of the issues that Israel always had was, do we withdraw before there's the day after plan in place? Meaning, because the minute we withdraw, Hamas takes over. And so what we've seen is Hamas has in fact taken over the territory in Gaza that they are in control of, which is not all of it, of course. And so the concern now is, how do you bring in another force when they're already reasserting control? What requires them to, or forces them to lay down their arms and stop their control of Gaza? And that's, I think, going to be a very difficult thing to achieve as time goes by.
Right. And I'm wondering, what your view is on the likelihood of this playing out exactly as imagined by the negotiators.
I think that all the phases beyond this one, there are no details behind it. I think the negotiators decided as a tactic to get to a yes first and then figure out the details later. And I think that's probably the right approach. But that means that we don't really have anything that's going to happen in the coming days and weeks. And I think that we're probably going to be frozen here for a little while as they figure out what the next step is. And I think we have two pictures that we have to look at. One is Israel and its neighbors, which is Israel, Hamas, and what happens in Gaza, what happens in the West Bank. But then you have the bigger picture, which is what happens in the Middle East. And can you get to normalization with Saudi Arabia, which I think you can. And can you get, once that happens, do you get broader normalization with Muslim countries? So I think that we're really at a critical moment, but also one that has a lot of potential for the Middle East.
Things happen gradually, and then they happen all at once. I think someone said that. I'm not sure how to view this, because I was thinking about going all the way back to, I don't know, think of the names almost, like Anwar Sadat or Menachem Begin or Golda Meir. I think about how long this has been such an intractable issue that the world has faced. Now, sooner or later, we were hoping for some type of, for lack of a better word, like an Arab Spring or a move into the 21st century for that part of the world to more closely resemble the West. Is this really it, do you think? And like I said, it's been gradual. Like, slowly we've seen certain countries that we used to think no way it would ever happen. One by one, it started happening till we got to this point. Is it possible to be optimistic about the whole region right now?
One, I think you should always be optimistic. That's what makes us able to deliver. But look, I think this is still an intractable crisis. And and conflict. You still have the West Bank that is in a very difficult spot with settlements growing and agitation between the Palestinian population and the Israeli population growing, not diminishing. Gaza is still 2 million people that are hostile to Israel and Israel hostile to Gaza. So you still have Hezbollah that is not yet disarmed in Lebanon. You have a lot of dark forces. So I think you have two different Middle Easts. You have the Middle East of the Arabian Gulf. UAE led the way with Bahrain, but now if Saudi joins, that is one Middle East that is focused exactly as you said on the 21st century, on becoming powerful economies that are, where oil is only their bonus, where they can have a balanced budget without oil, and doing that through technology and growth. And then you have other countries in the Middle East that are still very hostile to the West, economies that are at a very different place, very low economies with failed states. So I think you still have these two Middle Easts, and I don't think we should be fooled by one side that is focused on growth while the other side is still at near conflict all the time.
Amos, what is your sense, though, of whether Hamas ever gets effectively disarmed? Because as long as they have arms, doesn't this remain an intractable issue?
Yes, and that's what I think. That's why I said before, I think it's very difficult to imagine them laying their arms. What you're seeing already, the second every place where Israel is withdrawn, Hamas has reasserted its control. And whether they're calling themselves Hamas or they're putting a new label on the uniform, but Hamas is asserting control and they have weapons. And they're going to continue to grow in those areas. So it's very difficult for me to imagine that some kind of magical foreign force is going to come in and agree to gun battles with Hamas and achieve that. I think there has to be there's going to have to be a broader reconciliation on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. I think the two-state solution is not dead yet, but it is severely wounded. And there's going to have to be some kind of understanding of how the Palestinians govern themselves outside of international control. But I think it's very difficult.
Can you speak to this issue, which is, and we were talking about it around the table during commercial break, I, for example, think this is an amazing, historic, and fabulous day. I think Joe and Becky do, too. Having said that, you go online and the response is as negative could be about Israel and about the reputation of the country, frankly, about Jews. I mean, it's all wrapped up together. And I wonder, to the extent you're thinking about that, how you think that changes or doesn't change under these circumstances.
Look, I think you have there are a couple of things I would say. One, it's devastating to see after 2 years since the horrific events of October 7 that Israel is the one that is isolated around the world. And part of that is, to some degree, an overreach in how they executed the war, especially in the last 9 months. Civilian toll is very, very high. But there's always going to be a double standard when it comes to Israel.
Why do you say that? There's always going to be a double standard.
Because there always has been. Look, it attracts the attention. Conflicts in Israel and around Israel attract the attention like no other conflict does. This is not whataboutism. There is a conflict in Sudan that is devastating, with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of casualties of Ukraine and so on. There are conflicts around the world. This one captures the imagination around the world, in every part of the world. And so there's always going to be this fascination with it and a much bigger attention given to it. But look, I think that we have to focus on the fact that people were marching down the streets demanding for a ceasefire now, demanding for the war to end. The war has now ended, for now at least. The ceasefire is there. And people should be happy. Those who were calling for it should be out in the streets celebrating. As you said, they are, for some reason, not doing that.
Right.
That's somewhat bizarre to me.
No, I can, I've seen the list on Twitter of the Hollywood types that not a word. They were so animated about it. Let me ask you one more thing, Amos, because there was some tepid praise from some former Biden official, Jake Sullivan, that, time and circumstance finally happened for Trump, where our original deal that we had is finally getting done because of time and circumstance. And I understand that, how that can happen. But do you think that, I don't know, what happened to Iran's proxies, what happened in Syria, what happened in Doha, I mean, all the things that we've seen that have sort of compromised, and, Fordo, in terms of steps that the United States and Israel has taken, don't you think that this became a lot more likely and possible given some proactive things that the Trump administration did in support of Israel?
Look, I think that there was a lot of pressure on Israel and there was a lot of pressure on Hamas. I think that there is never one reason why things happen, and I've been pretty open about the fact that I think that the negotiators here, Jared and Steve, have done an excellent job in getting this. There were a number of phases to this. One was when the attack happened, the Biden administration, myself included, we were determined to make sure that Iran did not fire a bunch of missiles, that Hezbollah did not come into the war at that time. We sent out enormous amount of U.S. military capability to the Middle East to defend Israel, to save Israel from further destruction. Israel that looked very different on October 8th than it does today. We had the ceasefire with Lebanon that I negotiated, that, as to some degree, models for how the governing of the relationship between Hamas, Gaza, and Israel post-ceasefire now is going to happen. The proxies were weakened dramatically already then. I think there is a feeling that in January there was a ceasefire in place that was achieved right on the seam between the Biden and the Trump administration, and that perhaps that could have been turned into the permanent deal at that time. And I think that's probably true. And the last 8 months of delay in that I don't blame the Trump administration. I think Israel walked away from that ceasefire at that time and did not want to implement it. That cost the lives of a lot more people and delayed not only the ceasefire, but also caused a lot of harm for Israel's reputation around the world. Yep. I think the Trump administration finally understood, especially after the attack in Doha, that there needs to be a change and this has to come to an end, and the pressure was given and both parties had to compromise. I hope that this now holds. But I give credit to the Trump administration, but I also think that this is a continuum of what's happened over the last 2 years since the horrific events that are literally were right on the anniversary of 2 years ago.
We used to talk to you about oil all the time. Obviously, oil was under 60 for a while today, and I was going to just needle you a little. You think how much is the SPR still depleted? Maybe we should buy it back. Should we be buying it back now, Amos? Would you suggest that sell high, buy low? Does that sound like a good idea at this point?
Absolutely. They should be buying, and they should be buying it into the SPR so that we have it for the next time that there's a crisis. Look, the one thing we know about oil markets is whenever it's going down really low, it's going to come back up at some point, at some day. Oil demand is still high. But by the way, the oil price has a large impact on what's going to happen in Gaza. The ability of other Arab states to be able to support and to rebuild $1 trillion of what's going to be necessary in Gaza at $60 a barrel is quite difficult. But I would buy back into the SPR.
Just want to get you to put out a strong buy on oil. Amos, thank you. Appreciate it.